Welcome back to the Triple J Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Rasmussen, and we are back with episode number 7. And our guest today, head men's basketball coach at Cal State San Bernardino, Gus Argenal. Before I properly introduce Gus, I want to drop a message to everybody. If you haven't already, please click subscribe and like those videos, and love the comments coming our way. Really enjoying that. So please continue to do so. We're definitely trying to grow the channel. Thanks again for tuning in. Without further ado, Gus Argenal is a 20-year veteran men's basketball coach at the collegiate level. He and I were teammates. He was also an assistant on our staff at UC Davis my senior year. So we've had that relationship as both player and coach within a few years of each other in age. And he's had an incredibly successful career. He's coached at a lot of schools. His most recent stint was with University of Arkansas with those March Madness runs with Coach Eric Musselman. He was on his staff before taking up the San Bernardino job and promptly going on a run to the Elite Eight in the Division II NCAA Tournament. Gus has also been on staff from Arizona State with Coach Rob Evans, Ben Braun at Rice, Brooks Thompson at University of Texas San Antonio, as well as a couple stints at UC Davis, including one under then and current head coach Jim Less, as well as time at Cal State Fullerton with Dedrick Taylor. And I might be missing some. Head coaching job. First go around was at Cal State East Bay in the CCAA, where he now returned for Cal State San Bernardino. So Gus has been an assistant and a head coach throughout the years, and someone who is incredibly competitive, compassionate, great leader, motivational, great basketball mind, and somebody who got the most out of his ability as a player and is really well equipped to do so as a coach. During his time as an assistant, he's definitely made an impact on a lot of student athletes that have turned into pros, and understands how to foster and facilitate the development and a long list of players that have gone to have pro careers, many in the NBA, a good number of them from his time at University of Nevada, Reno with Eric Musselman, as well as his time at University of Arkansas. He's picked up a lot of great knowledge from his time underneath those great basketball minds, and he shares a lot of that. And we talk a lot in this episode about the wisdom with age, the evolution that takes hold, whether you like it or not, as you get a chance to kind of revisit and gather more information as a leader and as a coach, and also how being a father affects the way you see things as a coach and a leader and make decisions. So really grateful that Gus came on, and I hope you all will enjoy the insights. So without further ado, episode 7, Triple J Sports Podcast, Gus Argenal. Hope you all enjoy. All right, well, welcome back to the Triple J Sports Podcast, and my esteemed guest today, Mr. Gus Argenal, a longtime friend, teammate, and coach of mine with that complexity of a relationship that I cannot appreciate more as a person. So I'm super excited. Gus, thanks for being here today, man.
I'm fired up, Phil. This is awesome, and excited to talk and bring up some good old stories and some memories. But thanks so much for having me. And I've been watching what you're doing. And this is awesome for coaches and people of business to have a place to speak and connect. And so I'm really excited to be on.
Well, appreciate you, man. Yeah. And congrats on a phenomenal run right out of the gate here at the Yotes over down in San Bernardino with an Elite Eight run, man. Tell me, what was that like to hit the ground running there?
I feel really lucky to take over a program that had gone to the Final Four in 2023. We brought back 4 or 5 guys, and then to bring in a whole class of 10 new student athletes, to bring them together, in August essentially, and to be able to go on a 7 or 8 month run and get all the way back to the Final Four, win a championship. We've won 3 straight league championships and now 2 straight Final Fours. So super lucky. This is a program that's gone to 5 West Regionals. It's steeped in tradition. As you and I know, we used to have to compete against these guys. But again, it's such a quality athletic department and program. So I'm just lucky to be in the head coaching chair again and to be back on the West Coast, and excited for the future.
That's awesome. Well, you're a father of two, your kids, boys have grown up. You're, a family man, obviously known your wife Hannah since we met at Davis, and you've been through what would be the coaching ranks. So I want to circle back and kind of start a little bit kind of towards the beginning and then dive in, because there's so much to cover. And you are a Bay Area guy, grew up, played for a high school legend at De La Salle, and then where we linked up at Davis. But would love to kind of start with what kind of foundation and what you took from getting to play for Coach Alaco and the De La Salle kind of machine that he created down there.
Yeah, Coach Alaco is a special leader, motivator. I grew up going to Frank Alaco's, summer camps. They're called Excel in basketball. And every kid in the Bay Area where I was from wanted to go to that camp. And so it's an interesting thing when you go from third grade to eighth grade and you want to play for a certain high school coach. He was at somewhat of a rival school in Northgate. And then going into my junior year, he changed over and came to De La Salle. And it was a big deal in the East Bay to have him change over from Northgate to De La Salle. And I was just so lucky to be able to play for, the type of leader that he was. I had a great high school coach before that, Reno, who went on to Cal as an assistant coach. But then to get Frank Alaco, again, who was not just a tactician, but really just a motivator. Every day we felt like we were in, Remember the Titans, Rudy. We were, I had never been motivated like that and excited. And as basketball players, all of us, we're so, intrinsically motivated on our own. That's what we do every day. You wake up and who's better than us? Nobody, nobody's going to work harder than us. And Coach Alaco really tapped in, that with me. And I think it was the start of me wanting to be a coach, was to be able to impact another person's life like he impacted mine. I always say, I have my dad is 1A. He's kind of 1B in my life. And he's been in my life since, I was in third grade, really, still with jobs that I take, with situations I get into. So you can't underestimate who you're lucky enough to be around at a young age. And I know you had, high school coaches and youth coaches, and your dad was such a big proponent of teaching you the game. And so when we're lucky enough to have men in our lives that teach us how to not just be, good players, but good people, good teammates, they motivate you on such a different level. And so I've always just wanted that as a coach, is to have guys look back on their experience coaching or playing, for this coach with the way that, I admire Coach Alaco.
That's really, really cool to hear. And I will say that, just as a Jesuit guy, I grew up doing the same thing, right? I went to the Jesuit camps. My dad, who was my role model, sent me there every year. And I grew up watching Isaac Fontaine and Chris Griffin and Ben Ammerman at Jesuit. And they were kind of my role models, and playing for Hank Meyer. And, Coach Alaco was lucky I dislocated my thumb in that, NorCal championship. Otherwise, I think we take that title from him. So I'm just going to revisionist history that. But the impact that those guys had, I think, I look back and I think what Coach Meyer taught me changed a lot of my mindset and helped me to be successful going forward. And, I can only imagine, with Coach Alaco, when you play for a legend like that, I'm sure you didn't realize it necessarily to the level that you do now as a kid. But really, really cool to do. And then you ended up obviously at Davis and started there, and that's where we started to connect and played as teammates. So tell me a little, how did you end up at Davis? What was kind of the decision making process, and talk a little bit about your experience there.
Well, I would say one thing that you kind of tapped into about the high school, and then I'll go on to Davis, was when you walked into a gym and you were playing against Coach Meyer's team or Coach Alaco team, or this, Coach Lippy that was in the city in San Francisco, you knew that you were playing their program. And, and even in business, that this type of a business partner runs their stuff this way. And so we were both lucky that we were around almost a college program in high school. And I felt like Davis fit me when I went through the recruiting process. I was not as talented as you, and I probably found the right level, which was, a good Division II program. I was getting recruited by some lower Division I schools, and I went up there for a break the record night, and there was 8,000 people walking. There was a line around the corner, for a fall game and or not even a game, a practice essentially. And I just never seen something like that. I'd gone to Stanford Cal games. They were coming off a national championship, so it was a great fit. It was a great academic school, and it just for me, I hadn't gone and looked at, nowadays kids are going all over the country and looking at campuses. I was pretty much, a Northern California, Southern California regional guy. But it was just a really good fit. And to me, it's always been somewhere that you're wanted, and they wanted me, and they were excited about me. And I don't know why, because I wasn't scoring very much for them. I could get the ball across half court and not turn it over. But again, I think the program fit who I was. Super disciplined, great guys when I was around, on my recruiting visit. And then I will say this, in July, I went up there with my dad just randomly to walk around campus. My dad's like, we got to go up there when the coaches aren't setting it all up. So we go up there, and I went there probably the one day I should have gone there. They were having the biggest high school girls volleyball tournament in Rec Hall. So I walk in there, and there's truly thousands of high school volleyball players. So I was pretty fired up. Well, exactly. I thought that was campus every day. And then obviously going through the process, Brian Fogel, was the head coach at the time, but going through that with the program, Greg Klink was the assistant coach. I was lucky enough to go to a place like Davis and then meet guys like you. And I think that when you go to good programs, you get to be around great people. And so I know we were both really fortunate to just get our foot in the door at Davis, and it just opened so many doors for our whole life.
Without a doubt. And you definitely, as are underselling yourself. Obviously, the intangibles and the tangibles of what make up a great student athlete, a great basketball player, are definitely one of the things that I'm sure as a coach, right? That's part of what you're trying to help people understand, is that scoring points isn't the only thing. It's what the media loves. It's what everybody enjoys showing. But you understood how to win, man, and obviously for the viewers. I started, at Fresno State, and then I transferred into Davis right around the time the transition was made. And so, as you and I met, right, I think I enrolled in the spring. So we met, I started school in the spring, and shortly after we were now essentially on a coaching search, and we ended up with kind of being involved in that, which certainly wasn't the plan when I joined, but, and then we ended up playing for Gary Stewart and went through what was, I would call military training, and certainly a shock value in the spring. So, but I had my own kind of journey of kind of adjusting to a significant change. But you, being a guy that had a successful career and was heading into your senior year, there's this significant change and like a culture shock that only could be experienced, not probably explained as well. What was that like for you? What were the challenges as springtime heading into your senior year? Now you got to deal with an entirely different structure going forward.
I think it always helps me. I've been gone through. I've worked at 10 different universities, 8 different head coaches. I've gone through the change as a head coach myself. I think that really prepared me to be a coach. When I went through and sat in on meetings, we had 3 or 4 different coaches come to campus. You're meeting with the faculty athletic rep. You're then going over and meeting with your team. Who do we like? Who do we not like? What fits us? And then suddenly you realize, hey, they're having an announcement this afternoon. Gus, we want you to be over there. You're the team spokesman. You're going to sit up there with the new head coach. And by the way, this is who it is. And so you go through this as a student athlete. You think you have all this input, and you do have some, but university has to make the right decision for themselves. But then as a student athlete, you get thrown into, you lose a little bit of your confidence. I had this routine. What's going to happen to our assistant coaches? What's going to happen to my role? Are we going to be good? Are players going to leave? There's all these different things going on. And for us, then, Gary Stewart was a very strong personality, and his way was going to be this way. And we had to jump on board with it. And it was a super big challenge for all of us, physically, mentally. It was just different. But you know what? For that group of young men, the next season, they really squeezed a lot out of our group. And I always remember, like, the job of a head coach or a leader is to get the most out of the group they have each season. And I thought that we really pulled a lot out of our group. It had a lot of heartaches, and there were a lot of things, a lot of you and I sitting next to each other in study hall, like falling asleep after practice because we're getting up at 5 a.m. We're going, if people want to hear a good, schedule, we went conditioning in the gym for an hour, swimming for an hour, weights for an hour every morning, just to start your day. That was your breakfast and vitamins. But
that's right.
I learned a lot. And I also learned, how hard it is, not just for the players, the coaches, everybody involved, and how you have to mesh it all together if you want to be successful in that first year in a quick way.
Without a doubt. I mean, and you're like, I obviously didn't, I remember not having the appreciation for what you went through in the same way that I obviously do today. I was in my own world trying to deal with, I just transferred here and this isn't what I expected. This isn't what I planned for. This is not the vision that I had. And, I prior to joining, I blew out my ankle. So I was stronger. I had spent a lot of time, but I wasn't in great shape. So I was definitely not prepared for those 5 a.m.s conditioning wise. And that was a challenge. But I look back at it, same thing like you. I learned, I think, in terms of the toughness and an ability to just kind of get through whatever's in front. I mean, the knots in my stomach every night before bed, knowing what we were going to go through the next day was always incredible. And Coach Klink was on here the last couple episodes, and he brought up an event which to this day I both respected and appreciate, and also you're a dick for it to this day. But we went through the, at the end of that fall or the spring, excuse me, when we're doing the Ironman. And, I'm not an idiot, so I don't know anything around the campus. I don't know how to get from I don't even know what the buildings' names are. But I knew you were in shape. I knew you were going to go hard. I knew if I followed you, I'd get to where I needed to go. And you thought that, that was an opportunity for you to ditch me since I, was a few minutes behind you. So I'd like to have you walk us through your mindset when you decided to ditch me on the run to pick up the balls around campus on Davis at spring of 03.
These are the good stories right here. Yeah, we had this challenge, just whatever they wanted to call it, this scavenger hunt, right? Where we had to pick up these balls at 5 in, so they knew we had gotten to the spots. Phil's chasing behind me, and I always say this, like you look back at yourself. That's 20 years ago, right? I guess 20 years ago.
That's right.
2004, and you look at it and you say, "Gosh, I was a jerk, man. Like I was not that fun to be around, and I was too competitive. I'm trying to find every way to win. I'm trying to." And so I have to tell my guys that now, when they talk to a certain guy a certain way, like, hey, I have to pull guys outside and be like, look, the way that you're communicating with him is not how he wants to be talked to. The way that you talk to him. And I think that those experiences, like I always look back at, man, I could have been so much better as a leader if I would have helped more than trying to, just push myself up. It's part of the learning process as a man. And,
absolutely.
Sports are great. But yeah, Phil's chasing me around, and I'm telling him to go this way, telling him to go that way. I'm leading him on a wild goose chase across places he doesn't know where he's going. Now, the one kicker is, though, that the media doesn't know that we should have got this out, is that Phil grabbed a bike during that, and Phil jumped on a bike, or so we said he did, that he jumped on a bike and was riding a bike on campus to try to catch up with everybody. So we don't know if that's officially true or not. But that was part of the rumors on our scavenger hunt, was that Phil grabbed a bike with no lock on it and was riding up to try to catch up to everybody. But, those are the things now when you look back. And I think that as people and coaches and leaders, creativity does help at times. Like that was a really creative thing to do. They look at us now 20 years, are looking back, and there's, like you said, you had the goosebumps in your stomach, or, the night before you're kind of like your stomach's hurting, butterflies. And then you do it now and you're thinking back at it like, oh my gosh, that was so classic that we were running around. And keep in mind, we only had white shirts on. We weren't allowed to have UC Davis shirts on at the time because we hadn't earned them yet. So Coach Stewart, we're still trying to earn them. But I think that Coach Stewart, had a method to his madness. And I think that the coaches, the great coaches I've been around, all have that in different ways, like a Coach Klink and all the coaches I've worked for. It's just, it comes out in different ways. And certain guys are more competitive at certain times of the year with certain things.
Absolutely. Well, and the toughness and the ability to just navigate and get through things. Obviously, we all got that, but there was no doubt there was things that we were doing some days where it was just like, what the hell are we doing right now? And I did ride a bike on another day. Just said to hell with this idea. I'm so far behind. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't in shape. I had gotten stronger. I was cardiovascularly horrendous at that point, put on about 15, 20 pounds. So rode the bike, but yeah, I remember to this day, I remember this like really specific moment. I wish I could name the building, but where I had started to run out of gas, and I was like, I just need to keep you within a certain distance to stay. And then that's when you ducked into the building. And then by the time I made it to the building, I didn't know where you went. And I actually, like, the more I laugh about it, it's like that's exactly what I would have done when I was a senior to somebody. I would have done the same thing. At the time, I was just pissed because I was like, I don't know where to go now. But total kudos to you for it. And I think, to your point, it's hilarious. It's the kind of thing that helped us be successful in the future because we developed this, kind of attitude of, we can get through anything. But, as we approach the year, and I think, you just touched on it, being a leader in any team environment, right? There's a lot of growth that has to occur, and you are figuring out who you are as a player, and you still got to figure out how to get through whatever the challenges you personally are navigating.
Yep.
And then step outside of yourself and try to influence others. And a lot of what you do at that age, it comes from what you're watching around you, right? And what works. And so when you're in, a fortunate position of being surrounded by great leaders who show you how to be a leader, because it's not about how you want to say it, it's about how that guy needs to hear it.
Right.
That matters. It helps to kind of create a better understanding that, that window when you're a senior. There's so much going on, and you're harder on yourself than you were, because I think you were a great leader. And like, I think, there was a couple times we clashed heads, but you were great about always reaching out and having conversations, which is why I knew you would be great as a coach. And I will say that Bernardino has a mark on my sheet always, so I think it's hilarious that you're there now, because do you remember the Jonathan Levy backdoor cut moment that kind of changed my our first year together there?
the lob
that Clink and I talked about.
Well, I remember this. So it was, I was lucky. Like you underestimate. You're talking about underestimating. I underestimated how good all the guys were that I played with. Right? You look back and you're like, well, that guy was pretty good. And Phil, and you were, super talented. You were only a sophomore at the time. And we're going through and I think this is part of the process. Is you and I had a couple of times, like after games, where we'd be in the hallway and we kind of like got after each other. Like, hey, I didn't like what you were saying there. Well, I didn't like what you were doing there. Hey, you got to know the back door is coming for a lob from Jonathan Levy. Like, if you don't know that, what the heck are you doing on the scouting report? You were getting dunked on, or, you know what I mean? Like, but you would go back and forth. And I think that that's really healthy. I think that right now in this society, we need more of that. And I think we're missing some of that. We're missing guys that are afraid to step on each other's toes. Because what happens, I actually remember sitting there in front of your parents one time, you and I, at Chico State, actually, and we had kind of a little something going on, and your dad and mom were sitting there listening to it, and then we were kind of like tapped each other on the back, and we kind of walked off, and we were both annoyed at each other, and then we were good to go, and I think
exactly
you go from being teammates to really close friends to like brothers as this goes along, and then once you hit that brother stage, you never lose that. But it takes a long time. You got to go through it with a lot of, in a lot of different ways. And whether it's a lob play that we miss, or, me not throwing the ball to you at the right time. I remember one time you told me, hey, when I'm shooting, don't throw me a bounce pass. Throw me it in my chest. And I still remember that. And I tell our point guards that all the time. I never thought about it. I'm just trying to get you the ball when I can get it to you. I'm not that athletic to get past this guy. So, I'm just doing it. But, the leadership part of it, and I was able to see you go from, a player as a sophomore to a junior where I was gone. I started my coaching career as a graduate assistant at Arizona State. And then I came back as an assistant coach at UC Davis at 24. And I'm coaching now a guy that's going into his senior year, kind of going through what I went through my senior year, where there's not a ton of you guys, right? There's lone seniors, like there's you there, and how to handle it. And, it's a different process. But then I respected so much the growth that you had. And I think that's the best part of college basketball, is helping guys go through this transition. And then, you help, as players help coaches become better versions of themselves as coaches. I now respected you more and understood what you were going through more. And I could help you, I think, a little bit better during that process, give you somebody to lean on during tough times.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, I think that's a really cool part of our relationship history too. And I remember specifically kind of some of the events that kind of led to, over the summer, realizing like I'm now going to be the only senior my senior year. And, that certainly wasn't my anticipation or my vision. And the first thing I thought of when that moment hit was you, because I had, been in that spot. And like you, I'd obviously grown. And so I had this immediate appreciation for, man, that's a lot of weight on your shoulders when you're trying to figure it out. And you certainly are not ever a finished product. So you're always evolving, but having you come back and, that was such a huge comfort piece for me to bring, your presence and your understanding, and know that, like, you knew everything we were going through. We didn't even have to talk about some of the things that were going to be frustrations because you had already lived them. So it made it real easy to do it. And I knew you understood every single aspect of what I was navigating. And you were, for me, it was a huge bonus to have you, come back. And I think, a lot of guys, I understand obviously where there's a lot of the player coach dynamics. That's a huge advantage as a coach, but that's also was a challenge for you. And I think I'd love to hear kind of your take on when you flip into that role. And I've experienced that in some ways, professionally and in coaching. That's an interesting shift. And I'm sure at times you were trying to figure out, how do I, go from player to coach? How do I, evolve that? And you did such a great job at it, but I'd love to hear kind of your mindset in that.
I appreciate it. I mean, I don't know, there is no right way. I do remember this going into my junior year. I worked Duke basketball camp. And sorry, this sounds like they're drilling out here, so I apologize.
You're good.
But in going through that, I got to meet Steve Wojciechowski and Chris Collins, who are two like famous guards that played at Duke. And I remember I had a couple of lunches where I spoke to him about that, going through the transition of being a guard that then comes back and is a coach on the staff there. And when I got the job back at Davis, I visited those talks, and they really just said, you just got to be you, and you got to be their friend all the time. But you got to be you and know that, your loyalty is always with the staff, but you got to just go back to being who you are with them as their friend, and then just put in sweat equity with those guys, like rebound for them more, talk to them a little bit more, do the things that your head coach can't do and doesn't want to do and doesn't, they'll never be able to connect on the same level. And I try to always tell my younger assistants, like, that is such a powerful thing on every staff, is the guy that, I think you and Amir had that relationship where he could come to you and talk to you from that, listen to you guys talk. He loved the ability that you had to believe in him, and so you just got to show belief in your guys all the time. And because at times it becomes such a business of winning and losing that you forget that everybody's trying to win and they need people that they can talk to. And it's really hard. Like for me now, the guys will come in here when they really have something going on, or we'll meet in the weight room, or I'll go walk across campus or call them on the phone late at night, but it's a different conversation. And it's maybe not as transparent as it is with Phil Rasmussen at Chico State as an assistant, or I was there, and you're just there for him. And again, I think you get more excited. You're almost more of a cheerleader when you're that younger assistant coach. You're there to bring energy. You're there to compete with them. You're there to guard them in practice. Again, it's you know exactly what they were doing on Thursday night because you were doing it a year ago before that. And so, the deal. And, that's you need to be realistic and understand that. And then you just have to draw the line. That's what I tell the guys all the time. You just have to be a little bit more businesslike, but you just still have to be their friend. But and everybody wants to have help to become a pro or to become a better version of themselves. If you're helping them get better, that's all the guys want. That's the only thing that somebody wants, is that somebody's going to invest and pour into their career.
That to me, that's like the most important thing when I think in any leadership environment, right, or any position, like you're going to have to reach points where you challenge people, where you make them uncomfortable, you push them to do something they don't want to do, or take something away from them that they want, right? Whether that's more shots, more glory, more whatever it is. But and understanding the team environment, the thing that really makes that flow with great cultures and winning is the idea that at the end of the day, I trust that you want the best for me, and I trust that you're trying to help me on a personal level as well as our team. And when you skip that step, I think that's where a lot of times it breaks down. And, guys will, you'll start to see it's the whispers, it's all that. And I know that's a core to who you've always been. And it's something obviously we learned really well. And you have a special relationship with Greg Klink and obviously that foundationally. But when I kind of pivot on our conversation here. You've worked for a lot of great guys, right? And you've worked for a lot of knowledgeable coaches, and I definitely want to highlight some of that. But, you know, when you left Davis and, you know, you went and you worked at obviously multiple kind of roles, you were the, you know, foundational piece that helped Coach Klink build at Chico together, right? He was the first person he called. Would love to hear you kind of describe that journey and that relationship, because again, you had that same relationship, played for him, and then worked for him.
Yeah, it's a different one. The one thing that you get automatically is when you walk in the office, you just know, like, you know what the other one wants. Like when I went from, you know, being your buddy and playing with you and competing with you, then you walk back in the gym and you're now coaching. It's like we both know where the other guy's coming from and what we want to do and how important this is to you. And I think that's like such a fun piece of it. I got to coach my brother at Chico State too, and I always look back at that.
That's right.
Yeah, really fondly, like that I had the ability just to do. He probably was annoyed at me a lot of the time that I had to.
Yeah, I imagine.
That was the first year where we were trying to, you know, Coach Puck Smith had done a phenomenal job there. But sometimes at the end of it, you know, it was just like, you know, there needed to be a little bit of a change in terms of, or the direction that we wanted to go and Coach wanted to go. But, you know, I think when I walked in the office with Coach and when I told him I went from Davis to UTSA as a director of operations, essentially for Brooks Thompson, who played in the NBA. And then I went back to, you know, Chico with Greg for 3 years. We just had a blank canvas to do whatever it was that we wanted the program to be. And I always look at that as like, it was such a special time for he and I's friendship. But then it was also, you know, it really taught me how much pressure was then on a guy that was, you know, the second in command, let's say, to bring in the right type of players that Coach wanted, that was, you know, really speaking the right mission statement every single day, you know, had the culture, was protecting the program, was working like a head coach. It was such an awesome experience for me to then be the head coach at East Bay, to be the head coach here, to go on and work later on. Greg really prepares, as you know, being an assistant for him, you know, you to do everything. And when I went to Chico, it was such a fun experience to get that place off the ground and running. And each year we started building momentum. But really it was a simple, you know, progress or process was just getting the right type of guys on the bus, you know, the right type of people, competitors that fit who we were. But again, it's a lot of work when you start in ground one with an office with nothing in it. To by fall, you have to have a team, and you know it is just it's a nonstop process. But one that I was so lucky to go through with Greg, and his success is unmatched really now on the West Coast over the last 16 to 17 years. And again, you know, we competed against him in the NCAA tournament again last year, so that's how much success he's had. And you know, San Bernardino, Cal Poly Pomona, you know, Chico State, those are names that just pop up in this league all the time over the past, you know, 15 years. But we're so lucky to have coached with Greg.
We are. Yeah. He is one of those guys that teaches you so many lessons outside of the game, as well as, you know, the obvious nature, just his leadership ability to the like specific element of his leadership. But I think, you know, I'd love to kind of get your take on. I was always, you know, we both played for Coach Stewart. We both played, you know, Coach Meyer was, you know, an in your face kind of guy. I'm sure Alaco probably, you know, was on you as well. Like I was kind of always taught and trained, you know, maybe not even aware of it. Like when things weren't going right, you were challenging guys, right? Confronting guys. And I had multiple moments where, you know, Chris Cobb and I would be in a meeting with Klink, and we would, you know, be talking, and it'd be the really candid, like, air it out. We're frustrated. This guy's not doing that. This guy's not working. And I might've gone in calm and left fired up, and then expected to see him kind of portraying that when we went to the team meeting. And then he'd be like, at the time, I'd be like, man, he's being so soft on these guys. And he's not even saying anything. It's like, what the hell? And I'm all wound up. And then I would watch us, and we would go out and the guys would compete. And what he was always great at was maintaining a level of confidence and continuing to instill belief. And during the 2 years that I was there, the second year in particular, we were struggling, and we went on a huge run to finish the year. And it was on the heels of a lot of those meetings where I thought he would go in and light them up and be more aggressive. And it was his approach and his steady confidence instilling behavior that I think really helped those guys just stay focused. So I would love to kind of get your take on that component of him. And I think something that a lot of coaches, like he said, a lot of times when you lay into guys, you're doing it for yourself, not really because they need it.
Yeah. Well, as parents, we know that, right? Whenever we're going wild, it's because we're annoyed about this and we're stressed out about what's going on. And now for me, Bo and Ace have to deal with, me, because at practice, we weren't very good that day. Right. So I try not to do it, but I think with Greg and the really good leaders I've been around, they can take all the information that's given from an assistant coach, a strength coach, whoever it is that's in your circle, that's helping you understand where your team is. And then as they walk out of that room and into that team room or a huddle or the gym for practice, they're able to kind of compress and realize what the message really needs to be. And they're really good at picking their battles. People say saving your bullets, right? During a season, you have like 6 or 7 of those bullets that you can really use to really get your message. I think Greg did a great job of balancing that. But going back to who I think we are, is we're super positive people. Yeah. We're energetic. We're passionate. We believe in like guys loving each other and having a great career together and not out of fear. That's not how we coach. And so for me, I've been lucky. I've been around a lot of coaches that coach in different ways. So I've been able to pick apart some of that. Some guys are a little bit more forceful in this way. And it's allowed me to kind of navigate who I am. But Greg really rubbed off on me, and I know the rest of the coaches, on how he spoke to the guys and how he just kept it really simple. Like, we're going to keep getting better. I know he talks a lot about blind faith, and for me, taking over this program this year, there already was faith because they had won a lot, right? And there was winning. But then you have to have blind faith when it comes over to how our staff's going to do it and how we're going to go moving from this day forward. And so you have to be really stubborn when you're a head coach in believing that is what you're going to do. And I know Greg is super stubborn about, hey, this is how we're going to communicate with our guys, communicate with people on campus. This is what we're going to be about. And I'm the same way with, just doing things the right way, having really good people that act the right way, because it produces winning all the time. It always does, as long as you get the right type of guys in terms of players. But if you do it out of fear, you don't get as much out of it. If you're loving the guys, you're in this battle and this journey with them, it's so much more rewarding.
With that piece in particular, it's funny, like what you just said made me go, because I just had a moment of memory with my now 9-year-old son and dealing with me. Like what I kind of took from all of that, right? What you just said about being positive and about instilling belief. I think at the end of the day, you're going to get the greatest performance, the greatest results out of anyone if they know that you believe in them, right? Regardless of, and that includes, doesn't mean, telling them what they want to hear. It's telling them what they need to hear, but knowing at all times you believe in their ability to accomplish that goal. And that's important. And, the endless teaching and being around it, like my 9-year-old, we left, I think we went and watched Aquaman, the second one, and we left, and there was something came up, and I went to start to tell him something. He's like, "Is this another lesson, Dad?" Like, and he's like, "Why is everything got to be a lesson, Dad?" And I'm just like, dude, you're so right. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna shut up. But go ahead, buddy. We watched the movie. Like, being around great coaches and great people that lead are where they they care about you. They're able to teach you kind of constantly. And I definitely took that from me. Like, I'm always trying to teach, but the element of caring about guys and is key. And I think like you said, you've been in an assistant role and a head coaching role, and you've navigated both. During the time, like touching on maybe now a couple of like the more successful tournament runs that you've had, right? You had a great run at Nevada Reno with Coach Musselman, Eric Musselman, which obviously is a name most people know, as well as your run at Arkansas, and you've obviously made a number of other stops in between. But like, let's zone in on kind of your time with Eric Musselman. What was it like working with him? Obviously in that assistant role, being able to be obviously a recruiter and a relationship guy, and you guys obviously had a ton of success. Talk about him.
Yeah, I look back on it really fondly. Like, I was at Cal State East Bay. I was a head coach there for 4 years. And it was around this time I got a random call at really early in the morning from Eric Musselman, asking me, if you had any interest in, coming back to being assistant coach in Nevada. And they had some really good players at the time there, in the Martin twins and Jordan Caroline, some NBA type players. We recruited Jordan Brown there. That was a 5-star. So when I had the opportunity to go learn from somebody that was, a former 2-time NBA head coach, has coached at every single level, I really jumped at it. And it was a game changer for my family, for my career in terms of the learning, the experiences we got. We went to, my 4 years with him as a coach, we've gone to 4 NCAA tournaments. I've been to Elite 8, 3 Sweet 16s. Again, I've won 2 league championships with him. So, been as high as I think number 4, number 5 in the country, and spent a year long in the top 25. So it's like when you get to do those things as a coach, those are things that, I grew up taking all the news. When I get the newspaper, I would cut out during the NCAA tournament all the cool articles, and I would put it on my wall. So then to be, able to go through that and be in those games and play Gonzaga at Oracle and doing all at Chase Center and doing all that, it was just such a dream come true. But you learn so much, and there's so much that goes into being that good, and winning 29 games, 29, 28, 27, you have to, the work that goes into it. Eric Musselman's a nonstop worker. He is diligent. He's on it. He's passionate. His energy is nonstop. People call him like a mad scientist. I guess you could say that with a lot of different things, with marketing, with how he builds a team, a roster, with being ahead of the game, with recruiting now and NIL and all those things. I think it just made me I wish I was able to work for him in my 20s before I was ever head coach, just because it made me think about things a lot differently, putting your roster together, how you play, your game plan. He's always tinkering and working. And I think, that's why he's had so much success. And that's why he's going to have so much success at USC. And, I've already been over to practice with him. And so we've been really close. Our families, again, we worked together for 4 years, so we're really close. And, but when you work for somebody that has that, you not only get Eric Musselman, but you get Keith Smart, who was an assistant for him, that was a head coach for the Kings. You're Kings, baby. There you go.
Right, man.
You get he was the Kings coach, the Cavs coach, the Warriors coach. You get all the assistant coaches that worked there. Then you also get the fact that Eric Musselman worked for Mike Fratello, and all the guys that he worked for. You get all that information. So I'll tell our guys stories about Chuck Daly that Coach Musselman told me, because I think they really impact winning, and they're little things that you can give to a player that help them, and they can really grab onto it too when it's somebody that's been at the NBA level.
Without a doubt, the NBA, obviously dream and aspiration, and you touched on like what you grew up doing. Same thing. I mean, that was a big part of what made me choose Fresno State. Right, was watching the UNLV running Rebels and seeing Coach Argenal. And I think being able to understand what guys are motivated by as a coach is a big thing, and balancing your desire to help them with humility and understanding that, like, I don't know everything. And actually, if I can deliver messages from other people, obviously that resonates. But, you also, I'm sure like any of us, right, as you're around other leaders, you pick up things, and you pick up things that are great that you're like, hey, when I'm a head coach, I'm going to implement this, and other things that, hey, I have no interest in doing this. I don't think this works. And, you obviously going through a few of the places that you've been. And, I think you obviously, when you were at Rice, that was Coach Braun, right?
Yes, it was.
Coach Braun, so you're with Ben Braun, obviously Eric Musselman. You've been as an assistant, obviously with Coach Stewart. You spent a year with Coach Les, who's obviously done great things at UC Davis. What would you say kind of in all those influences is a good synopsis of like what you take from being around leaders that have been successful, that have helped you become, who you are today now as a head coach leading, Bernardino?
You take one or two things that like really impact you from each guy. Like if I did it quickly, and I was lucky enough to be a GA for Rob Evans at Arizona State. He was a head coach in Mississippi, Ole Miss. He wins, 2 SEC championships. He was a program runner. He was super organized. Everybody knew what their role was. Like if you took one thing from that, it was when you came in August or July, everybody from the manager to the players to the best player to him, every single day, what was going on, he was running it. You may not talk to him for a week, but everybody knew where they were going. And he loved his guys, and he really fought for his players. I went and I worked for Coach Stewart, obviously, we talked about. Coach Stewart is super creative. random things when it comes to recruiting. He did some wild things recruiting that I was like, what is he doing? How is this going to work? I always tell the story, like we were recruiting a guy that we didn't know if we could, get it done. And I'm not sure if he put a picture of a shoe or if it was a picture of a shoe in a letter. And we sent it to a recruit and it said something like, hey, now that I've got my foot in the door recruiting you, let's really start this recruiting process. Like stuff like that he was always doing. And it could be cheesy, right? But it was like something that stuck. Hey,
memorable.
Hey, there's always ways to get in and help yourself. If you're not in a situation maybe that's the best, you have to be more creative, right? Working for Brooks Thompson, he taught me how to recruit at a national level. I was in Texas. And so like just seeing him on the phone and how he worked and how he talked to the players and how he used his NBA background to help them. Greg Klink, we've talked a lot about him and his culture and what he built and how he did daily. He was fighting for his culture. Jim Less, how to push the envelope at a school that's transitioning from Division II to I. Every single day he was trying to better the program for the student athletes. And he was aggressive about it. And I always take that from him. Ben Braun has won, 500 plus games, a Hall of Famer, greatest fundraiser I've ever been around. And I didn't even know he was doing it. The way that he would communicate with people, the way he would go play tennis with guys, the way he'd go have dinner with this guy, he was constantly working, but you thought he was just having fun, and then again, we're talking about Eric Musselman and then Dedrick Taylor, again, I would say as a mentor to his players and his staff, he really coaches the coaches. As much as anybody I've been around. And for me now, that's something that I think we both take from Greg Klink because we work for him. But Greg always put his staff as like, it was always me and Phil trying to do this. Gus and I are trying to do this. And so I really tried to also like now involve, my staff right now is awesome. Tim Bross, Marcus Black, Micah Dykes, those guys are helping us do what we're doing. So you take so much. But again, if, I have all these little points from each guy that I go back to. And I think it really influences, just kind of the overall who I am. Without knowing probably.
Yeah. I talked a lot about that. Like a lot of times, like the beauty of getting older and experience and wisdom is, and what I think sports teaches us, right, is, we're always looking to get better. And I think a lot of the lessons that we're fortunate enough to be privy to are not necessarily absorbed in the moment, but they totally affect us in the next venture, the next opportunity, where you're able to kind of sit back. And a lot of times just because you're in the moment, like, I joked about this with Coach Kling. It's like, there's not a whole lot of thinking about the future when you're at 5 a.m. and you're just like, can I at least just finish this workout? Right. I'm not thinking about the lesson because there's no capacity to, but there is a lot to be gained once you've had a chance to slow down and reflect. And, I think it's like a job as a leader. If you can help that guy that's in the moment grab a little bit more than you did when you were playing, then you're benefiting and you're helping them, be that much better of a leader. And like you touched on, the communication. I think the thing I've learned over the years and really try to be focused on, the business world's a lot of talking just emotional intelligence, but really recognizing that you've got to understand that person and how they're wired and how you need to communicate to them so that their ears are open and their mind is open to receiving the information. And you can't shortcut that. You got to invest in understanding them. So now as a head coach, like you're in that different role, you've learned all these lessons from great leaders, had tons of success. How are you trying to apply that, overall mindset and all the lessons you've learned to kind of create the, that vision and culture that you would, like to, have sustained at San Bernardino?
I think you have to just remind yourself each step of the way that you didn't, whether there's probably no failure really in one life too. And then coaching obviously is a big, like you really can't fail. I know that wins and losses, but like each step of the way, you're gaining so much that you just have to keep reminding yourself, hey, remember when this happened? Like, you remember how you responded to that? Like, why did you do that? It might've been right 10 years ago when I was a head coach at East Bay, when I had this situation go out, like you might've been doing these 6 things super well, but you were missing on these 4. Like you didn't do a good enough job with your schedule. You didn't do a good enough job with whatever it is. And you have to take those things and you have to drill down on, well, why did that happen? Was it because, I didn't spend enough time in it? Did I not fundraise this year as much because I didn't connect with that donor as much? Or or offensively or defensively, or what's going on with our team chemistry? Did I not spend enough time on that in the fall? And so I think that, the one thing I try to remind myself all the time is that even when we don't get the results we want, there's a lot of things that are going on that are really going well. And that's in games and seasons. And you have to just remind yourself and like go back to those moments that, okay, why did you do that? It might've been right. That's great. Like you did that. That was a good decision on how you handled that young man that day. But then you didn't this day you snapped really quickly and you're upset about this and you didn't take a lap around campus and then go back and talk to him about it. And so I think, as you get older and, I'm 43 now, this is year 21 of coaching. You're just more mature. You don't know, you didn't, it's the Bob Seger song, right? I wish I knew now what I didn't know then. Right. Or I wish, right. Whatever it is, you didn't know. And so you have to go through the experience of life. And I think both you and I think this is what's so cool about this is, we're former, players together, friends, teammates. And now we're talking about just like the life part of it. And, it helps me to bring back, you're making me think about things that I have to get ready for in a month with our team that I probably need to get on, and so, the process, all the things that you take from all these coaches, what you're trying to do to me is like, I'm trying to be just a little bit better than I was last year. I'm trying to improve our program, whether it's from one thing in our locker room, one thing with our gear, one thing with how we play, just bring a little bit more to this group than I did last year. And I think the longer you are somebody somewhere, you are able to give them a little bit more percentage of yourself. And, that's really, that's it. You can only do so much with this. The players are going to play. We're just there to not get in the way and try to help them and be, just the right model for them, so they look back on it like we do our experience. And that's really what I try to take from these coaches is I've had, if I can just take a little bit from each one and just try to remind myself of what would, Greg Klink do in this situation? What would Rob Evans, that's what I try to do on a daily basis and just remind myself. And then you have to be you. Yep. You've led companies. You have to be you every day. How I walk into this is very similar to what I did 10 years ago, but I probably just have a little bit more experience. I've done this meeting another 20 times now, right?
That's right. Well, that's a big part of like I think the mindset. So much of what a lot of people that don't play sports maybe don't understand is life, business, world, parenting, whatever it is. What the lessons that we accumulate learning over our careers, they just become these consistent things that we draw upon. So like there's usually some sort of a visual or conversational memory that will come up in my head almost anytime I run into a situation that I'm trying to assess how I should handle it. And it's people that have been coaches and leaders and teammates in my life and how I've handled situations that I'm drawing upon. And so that constant self-reflection and analysis and striving to get better is just like kind of ingrained in our culture. And it's a part of how you get better. I've definitely learned over the years there are certain parts of it in life where we can be overly and like self-reflective, where some people are great, just like I'm living in the moment and I'm not really thinking about it. And sometimes I wish I was maybe a little more like that as opposed to, trying to be perfect. But the intention of doing good and helping those around you, I think kind of creates the progression that I look at now. Like you're 43, I'm 41, there's no, the desire to be perfect and always give your best is healthy. And it's what we're always trying to do as leaders, as people, but it's impossible. And literally the age and the wisdom comes from all the mistakes that you make and all the things where you're like, man, I still could have done that better. When you look at it, like you're in a really cool position. Like you've taken a career path where you've learned from some great leaders. You've been an assistant, you've, had a lot of success and you've also you were head coach at East Bay and you took that role. And I think everyone should have a chance in life to step into a role, be there, learn from it, be out, and then go back in again, because that idea that you can be perfect the first time is just impossible. So what do you feel like having this, second chance now as a head coach in your second stint with all the lessons has changed for you?
What you bring up is like, you look at coaches and leaders and I feel super lucky that I got the opportunity at 31 to coach at East Bay. Like a lot of people don't get that opportunity. And then, you know, this in business and basketball and coaching, you always hope that, you know, you'll get another chance to be a head coach or a third chance. And like Rob Eson, our close buddy, you know, one of our best friends, you know, being able to be the head coach at UAB and having great success, but it just didn't work out. And then he has to restart, you know, like, so for me, I just feel like the chance to have gone there and been on, you know, the ground floor of building a program and seeing, like I said, all those little things that I did, and some of them were so right. You know, some of them, what I did with this, like, gosh, like, you know, you don't want to ever pat yourself on the back, but you're like, you were onto it, you know, and I have told people this before. This past season, being able to be here and you know, we made a Final Four run and we won a league championship. You know, I envisioned that happening when I was a head coach the first time. And I believe and know it would have. Sometimes it just takes a different timeline, like for all of us, right? It takes maybe a first try, a second try, a third try. Like it happens as players. Like to think that, you know, Pete Carroll, who goes, you know, and has his first run in the NFL and doesn't have the success he wants, then he goes to USC and then just kills it. And then now has, you know, that success again at the Seahawks. Like we're Bill Belichick. You know, if you study, I'm a history major. I'm not great at history. My dad always makes fun of me about quizzing me and, you know, but I really study like leaders and their runs because I did go through that. I went through 4 years at East Bay where I was really building it. And my vision was never to leave East Bay. It was going to be there for 20, 30 years. And sometimes it just doesn't work that way. Like I had an opportunity and I took that opportunity. And I didn't get to maybe complete my job. But the first thing is you want to always leave what you started better than when, you know, leave what you took over, you know, better than when you got it. And I know for a fact that I've always tried to do that every program I've been in. But in my coaching career, which is different than a lot of other guys, I've had shorter stints. And that's just kind of like I always said, I've been a salmon, I think, you know, swimming upstream, trying to find my way and try to really compete through this because I didn't really have a connection in the business. So to be able to work my way through all these different stops and then to be able to be in a program that I think is, you know, I think this is the best Division II program in the country. To be the head coach here now, I have a ton of respect for the journey. And I really value daily just being able to be in this position for my family. And then just to always pull back and be like, you know, it gives you confidence when you look back and say, gosh, what I was doing at Cal State East Bay, I took to us at Arkansas. And that helped us, you know, with whatever part of it, practice, culture building, that really helped Ricky Council, who's now in the NBA, you know, and that helped us recruit Jordan Walsh and Nick Smith and, you know, Jalen Williams. And, you know, it's always the same. It's always going to be about the relationship. Do you care about them? Have you invested in them? And again, can you help them become the better player? And then here, you know, it's the same thing. And so I'm lucky I think it's like an awesome question, Phil, like to be able to go through something one time and then get the second chance to do it even better. You know, I feel very fortunate. And again, I'm always evaluating like what I did, you know, how did we not win the championship this year? Like we lost in the Final Four to the same team, Nova Southeastern, that they lost to the year before. Like I had to find a way to maybe get us past that next one and get us to the final game of the year. So you're just always trying to find ways to do it a little bit better each season.
Well, and that humility kind of gets thrust upon us, right, as athletes growing through the program. Like you get humbled on a daily basis, right? You lose, you got to turn around. There's a interesting shift that I've had to kind of correlate over the years, right? Like what I loved about sports is no matter how pissed off I was because I lost, you have to turn around and go and just channel that energy into trying to change the outcome the next time, which made it simplistic in that nature, right? Life is obviously more complicated because when stuff happens, you don't necessarily get a second chance, or you don't even get to change that. Yeah. But a big part of what is, I think, an expectation and a challenge as a leader is you're taking people down a path, and sometimes you come into new scenarios that you've never dealt with, and you operate on what you've already learned. And when you get a chance to look back, you start to realize, hey, this is a breakdown. Like I know at points in my career, the way that I operate with relationships and caring about them were really successful. And then when I hit a certain point where there was so many, because we had grown to a certain point, I realized I struggled with that because I didn't have the capacity to give that at that same level anymore. And so when you start to see these things, then you start to get better understanding of where your weaknesses are and maybe where your philosophies make sense, but they have some holes in them, right? And I've learned a lot about that, trying to correlate sports and those lessons to life. But the beauty when you become a head coach is that you now get to then bring people around you. And I think self-awareness and understanding your weaknesses and then complementing that with the people you surround yourself with is the basis of a team, but also a staff. So what's your thought process, and like, how do you view, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and how you, adapt to those and fill those in so that you can be successful, at this point in your life?
Well, one is, I think the number one thing, and Dedrick Taylor always says this, who, played at UC Davis, actually coached me, and I was able to coach for him, who's, had one of the best, runs in Big West right now, gone to 2 NCAA tournaments. Self-awareness is the biggest indicator of success. And so, and I really believe that, like, that sticks with me all the time, whether it's a player, a coach, a person. And so I do try to look at that. What am I good at? I think I'm a really passionate guy. I think I'm creative. I think I can get guys motivated. I can motivate guys. I think I have a good basketball mind, and I've been around some really good leaders. But there are some other things where I'm like, hey, this guy, I need somebody. It's like Wedding Crashers. When Owen Wilson's yelling out, "I'm an ideas guy." Don't take the wind out of my sails, right? You have to have guys that can fill in those pieces of it, that maybe can organize you with this, are better at office management than you are, can organize months ahead, and maybe you're a short-term thinker, right? Like, those are all little things. Maybe somebody that's been around a style of play, or in the business world, a certain type of a business model differently. And so I really try to get a good combo in my staff. I have 3 assistants, and Tim Bross to Marcus Black to Micah Dykes, they're all different men that bring 3 different things that each one of our players need. And that's the number one thing. Like, there's what our program needs, but then there's what the student athlete needs. They need this from Tim. They need this from Micah. They need this from Marcus. But then I think the biggest thing, and it's a big piece of our core, we have like 5 or 6 core, words, beliefs, is trust. Like I got to trust them, and again, I think, like we talked about Greg Klink, he trusted you. He really trusted me, that I was just going to be doing the right thing. And so, guys, that your staff has to believe in your core. And for us, it's, accountability, trust, work ethic, passion. And then I think the big one that I think gets lost is joy, like having fun. If there's no joy in this, I say, if you're a Yoj guy, the opposite of joy, YOJ, like that's not what it's about. I want guys to be really passionate and have fun. But to your point, a great leader, finds those things that they're not really good at, and we all have those. And it's not maybe even so much that you're not good at them, you just don't enjoy them as much. So you need somebody to help you do them. I always tell young coaches, like, you don't like doing the office work at times because it's not as fun as going to go recruit the best player that we're getting in the program, or working a guy out. I love being in the gym with our guys all the time, but we have to do this. If you saw my board right now, there's a big get done list right now in front of me, and I don't want to do all those things, but you have to do it. And so, we're all doing that at all the times, is finding the right fit. And I think as I've gotten older, I've seen how coaches have built their staff, and what you need to influence guys in the right direction. And a lot of that too is their experience and type of players they've been around. Like I was lucky, I've been around, I think I have like 10 guys that are in the NBA right now. That impacts players. They want to be around people that have been around professional players, guys that, are doing what they want to do. And I think that staffs, you need to have guys that have been around those level of guys.
That totally hits the chord for most kids, right? Because whether they acknowledge it or not, at the end of the day, the dream of the NBA is something most of them have, and some have more realistic, like I probably won't. Others really do. So that's a big piece. But I'd list some of the guys. I'd love to have you kind of rattle off some. I know some of them, but I think it'd be great because you've obviously influenced a lot of guys in your career.
Talking about guys in the NBA?
Yeah, like some of the guys that are playing wearing an NBA jersey.
So I was so lucky. My first year ever coaching, I actually coached Ike Diago at Arizona State, who led the Pac-12 in scoring, was a lottery pick for the Warriors. So I got lucky. Every morning I was working him out, had to pick him up on the golf cart, take him to class. So I got really, the start of my career was around some high-level guys at Arizona State. But, just in the last 6 years, Cody and Caleb Martin. Caleb just signed a deal with the Sixers. Cody plays for the Charlotte Hornets. Ricky Council plays for the 76ers. He's dominating Summer League right now. Nick Smith was the number 1 player in the country. He plays for the Charlotte Hornets as well. Anthony Black was a lottery pick, one of my favorite guys of all time. And just a phenomenal family. He's playing for the Orlando Magic, I really think he's going to have a breakout year. We were just texting yesterday. Jordan Walsh was a part of the Boston Celtics championship team this past year. Jalen Williams plays for OKC Thunder right now. He's can start some games, comes in, it's pretty funny because he's playing on the same team as Chet, who we beat in the Sweet 16 when he was at Gonzaga. Jalen Harris is one of the leading scorers in the G League right now. Who else do we have here? I have Kamani Johnson is playing right now in the G League or in the Summer League right now. So, probably 8 to 10 of those guys. And then, Trevin Brazil is still at Arkansas right now. He'll have a chance to play in the NBA this next season. But, again, it's a lot of guys. And then professionally, guys like JD Note that was first team All SEC, just won the Greek League. Guys like that are playing. Trey Thurman, who played it. I could keep going. I mean, I have 20 to 30 guys that are just playing professionally, and I think that's part of it too. Is we all have our journey. Like professional basketball is professional basketball. We have a guy, Cedric Altman, that signed this year. He's going to be playing overseas. So every guy can get their opportunity. And, if you want to be a pro, it's just like really seizing that opportunity, because you can do it from this level. You can do it from Division I, mid-major, high major, Division II. There's guys that make their career all the way through. So I've been really lucky. And I would say this, the guys that really started it for me are the Jordan Carolines, the Cody and Caleb Martin. I always say those guys are, 2 or 3 of the best competitors I've ever been around. And they're like the greatest people. And it's just no surprise that they've made their way through this NBA. They just all have that same, inner drive, like the guys we coach at Chico State, the DeMario Sims, the Jay Flores, the guys that are true leaders. My brother, those are the type of guys that make it.
And there's a identifiable characteristic that you can see when you're around it enough in a guy that, they talk about like loving the game, but it's loving the process, right? It's loving being in the gym. It's loving the work that it takes to become a pro that, requires that you put the hours in when no one's watching. And then it just, for a lot of guys, right, it just comes down to then the God-given ability as to whether or not they're, 6'8" with the wingspan and athletic ability versus, 6'2". But I think to me, the part that, I loved coaching the most, I loved it, high school, college, is you get to relive, because you can relate to that dream that those kids and those guys have, and to be able to help them not make some of the same mistakes that you made, or learn those lessons a little earlier and learn. I know, like when I was coaching at, in high school and in Chico, the lessons that I was taught, the fundamentals and the stuff that John Welch taught me in just a year at Fresno State, like made such an impact on me. And then the fact that he taught, and obviously is a legendary workout guy in the NBA, like the fact that I had that time from him obviously meant a lot to me. And so being able to give guys, things that I learned was a huge piece. But for you, in, obviously seeing the success of the guys that you have, along with the teams, and then the guys that obviously just go on to have, other careers.
Yeah.
What about coaching as a whole do you like, if you were to have to stop it tomorrow and you were to do something else, what would you miss most about it? And what about being in that role that does, kind of defines the enjoyment for you?
I actually just got the chills. So can't fake those. Just the fact that, every year, like this year, I have an opportunity. We're going to have 14 or 15 guys that, there's a chance that those guys will, they're always a different level of it, that they stay in your life for a long period of time. Some guys, it's just like any relationship. You're going to be closer to certain guys. You connect on certain things. So if I had to stop today, that would be the hard part. Is like, I've been so lucky. I have 20 years times 15 of guys that I've been around that, I can pull from each team. Like we talked about Cody and Caleb Martin. I'm not coaching. I don't get to text them, after, Cody's in or Caleb's in a playoff game and say, like, thinking about you. Like, I can't even imagine not being able to do that, And so just being able to have these people in your lives, and that's why I think a lot of us got into coaching, I hope, is that we wanted to be able to do that. And then, like you said, just give them like something to impact them, and it fulfills you, right? Like that would be the biggest thing for me, is just losing the chance to have another group. And I love winning, and I want to, I want to win a national championship here. I want to, win as many games as possible and have the greatest runs you can ever have and keep that going. But the staffs I've been on, those are some of my best friends. Think of what basketball is created for. It's just those like the friendships and lifelong relationships and impact. Like, Anthony Black had 23 the other day, and like me being able to text him and his mom, Jennifer, and he hits me right back. Nick Smith, every time I write something to him, he always he makes fun of me about something, but just to be able to have not just those guys with the NBA, I'm talking about every guy, trying to see what Robbie Robinson that played for us this year, what he does with his career moving forward, and you just, that's what coaching has done for me. It's given me, hundreds of guys that I have a relationship with now that I would have never had in something else. And I think that for you, being a leader of people, how you did it, that was the thing that you get out of it, right? That's the satisfying part, is to be able to help lead people and, try to make their career and their experience much better.
To me, I think that's the part, that at times I struggled to always correlate, because not everybody has that same makeup. And I think that's what makes the locker room special, right? Yeah. Is that you have this really isolated moat around you, that it really kind of is this special place where you almost have your own language, you have your own culture, your own structure. Yeah. And unless you're in that locker room, no one else can relate to it, right? No one else can understand. I mean, yeah. Unless you played together with us at Davis, you won't understand why my nickname was Cheese, because you wouldn't have been there for the evolution of cheese, right?
I was going to bring that up. Yeah, you wouldn't know, you wouldn't know that our apartment sat there and watched Old School 27 times a day. And someday we were talking about Philly cheese, and Phil said something, and then we all started screaming cheese.
That's right.
Every time I text you, I put the little cheese emoji or whatever.
Cheese emoji in it. And the average I said this, to this day, and anytime someone will say it that I run into, I always laugh, because I'm like, if someone doesn't have it, I'm like, there's a lot of directions they could go with how that came up, and not all of them are great. So I'm always like, that was why our son is named CJ. I'm like, he has a nicknameable nickname or name, so he will end up with a nickname regardless. Hopefully it just won't be random. No, but funny. I think that's special for people, and it's something that I you can't really recreate, because, and Rob said this when we were talking on his episode about the shared adversity, right? Like, there's this thing that happens when you're in an environment and you go through things where inside of your head you're all going, I don't know if I can do this, or I don't know if I can get on the other side, and then you look around and you see everybody pulling together and making it happen. And, I look back at, kind of the career and that we had playing, and then watching you guys go off and seeing, like you said, you've had to go lots of places. But one thing I've always known about you, based on our relationship, is that you are a grinder, you're tough-minded. And I knew that, no matter what, you were going to end up finding the success you were looking for. And I think it's really cool to see your evolution, right? And living through it as a dad with 3 kids myself. Things change. Like, I'm sure what you said your goal was when you were in your 20s and even in your 30s has changed now that, Bo and Ace are at a different age. And so, how has fatherhood really altered this, the drive and the competitive, kind of attitude that, you thrive upon to be, successful?
Yeah, I think one thing, 2 parts of that, and again, you're hitting on all these great things that I think for everybody you think about is your goals change, as you, unfortunately, as we get older, right? Like, I'm listening to this book called Outlive right now, right? And it's a really interesting book, just about longevity. And, I do think that part of it, at first you're trying to figure out, how do I make it? And you're trying to do everything you can. And, at first it was, hey, I want to be at the highest level all the time and of college basketball. And that was my dream. And then the next year it was, well, maybe Hannah and I want to start a family, so maybe we need to get closer to home, and maybe Chico State is a good idea for us to go be an assistant coach there. And then I wanted to be a head coach again, and well, I'm not getting as many options as I want from this place. I need to go to this level and try to go. You're doing all these things. You're jumping around, right? And then, you and I, we have our families and our wives, and then you're starting to evaluate every decision you make, how much it does affect. And, for me, I'm always very honest with it. Like, my moves have been super hard on my family at times, and they've been really beneficial. We look back on, and just last night we were looking at pictures and laughing about certain stops, at Nevada or this place. And we were laughing, Bo and Ace are on TV doing all this, but there's a price that goes with every, dad, mom, parent taking their family on this journey, and so obviously Hannah has been super like supportive of what I've done, but there's been, we've lived in, I want to say 17 different homes. I've had 11 different jobs. Yeah. And that's not an exaggeration. Hannah would be right here telling you, no, it's actually 18. we list them off. Bo's lived in 11 different houses in his time, and he's going to turn 15 on Saturday. So like, that's a lot of places. You're moving a lot. Now being a dad, like, where I am at now is, I have to keep a balance for them. My moves affect them so much more because they have, once you get to that age of like 6, 7, 8, they start really, building their friendships and their crew. And so I have a ton of respect for the toughness of my kids and my wife, like how they've been able to change. And they have an innate ability to like get excited about the opportunity. And then what I think Hannah does a really good job of is she keeps them connected to their old friends. And we have all this crew of people in all these different stops, from the Bay Area to Texas to Arkansas to Nevada to down here in Southern California, that now we can like come together at times. And so, for me, having kids is really, said Gus, you were pretty selfish during this for some while, bouncing around all these places, and it respects, just childhood development too, like how these guys build friends and friendships. And you really have to think about that, just like you do your roster and your team and how they're growing as people. So I have so much respect, and I'm so proud of my boys that they've been able to kind of make their way every stop along the way. And hopefully it, bodes well from down the road. But it's definitely a journey that is not for everybody.
Well, it's something I don't even have to ask it, knowing you and Hannah, as long as I've known you guys and you as a couple. You pretty much had put the ring on the finger while we were playing together. So it was you guys have been one as long as I've known you. But just whatever that life journey is with your kids, right? You're trying to figure out, again, self-awareness and also awareness of what the implications are, so you can try to teach them the things they need and how they can have the perspective, right? And I think that's the thing I try to do, and I certainly don't nail it all the time, is that you can't stop the kids from having their own run into the brick wall moments, and they're going to go on their own journey. But if you can help them have the right perspective on what to take from it, then ultimately you're giving them the gift that I think when we're at our best, it's because we have perspective on what our journey has taught us, right? Like, how did we get here? What do we know because of it? And moving around a lot, I know, is a big part of when I finished and I left Chico, was trying to figure out how to make that family adjustment. And I admire you and the boys and Hannah for all that they've been able to do, and I'm obviously thrilled that you're there. Although I like I said, I've offered my services to Coach Klink to come put a stop to the winning streak against Chico anytime he wants to get back on that bag. I'm undefeated against Bernardino. I think it's a return against the Jonathan Levy moment, because that was one of the low points in my college career. So
we don't need you. We don't need Coach Klink doesn't need any help. But I appreciate you saying that about Hannah and all of our like families. Like, it's funny you saying that Hannah so long. I mean, think about that. Like, we were in college together in a relationship. I think as you grow, relationships, whether it's your wife and your friends, like, they all take this different like path, right? And so we're trying to as friends, like, help each other and help anybody that listens to some of these little tidbits of life. And then I think for me, it's helpful because I think about what my like boys and Hannah go through on a daily basis, but then also just really embracing and like cherishing like the moment, like you talked about. With each team, I try to do that. Like, you try to like really embrace like this group of guys. They're totally different. And I think with like our families, we're both doing the same thing now. Is like this stage of life, I'm really trying to like squeeze the most out of them, being one in high school, one in 7th grade, us being in Southern California, enjoying like, this and San Bernardino. And so it's a fun time of life. I'm glad I get to share it with you.
Oh man, I appreciate you bringing all that to the show. And when I, look at where you are today, and I, again, couldn't be more proud, and I'm certainly not surprised. I, in particular, am, most struck by when I look at, your journey, right? The awareness of all the people that you've touched and kind of the person that you are. And I obviously look back to our time together, and I think your genuine, nature as far as who you are as a person and kind of being authentic is always key to kind of building any relationship. And whenever I see clips of you or I see what's going on, I know that like you are who you are and you've been that way for a long time, and just try to refine and piece together a little more whatever expertise, polish is what we're all doing, right, as pros. And I will wrap on I know we've been going for about an hour, and I appreciate you, man, taking the time. And looking a few stories on our time. We'll circle back in any moments. We can couple it into kind of our time playing together and your time coaching. Any moments in particular that are some of your like favorite moments, that are like funny stories, things that really jump out, like where you think back and go, I can't believe that happened, or something like that. And putting me on blast is fine as well. I'm not afraid to be humiliated on my show. So any top of mind?
Gosh, that's a really good question. Yeah, I have a bunch. With you, I think the funny thing is just I look at it going, Phil's this like huge scorer. He comes in, and I just look back at it. It's not even funny. I just look back at it and go, it's amazing that here we were, and you transferred in, and how lucky we all were that we had like this group of guys that came together, because like we had like so many characters on our team. And I'll just go back to my senior year, and you were a part of it. And so kind of it brings it together, and actually involved San Bernardino. But I was so lucky, because you're talking about like a fond memory. My senior year, we played San Bernardino, and they were top 5 or 6 in the country on senior night. And we were lucky to win. You played really well. I didn't do really anything. I played a lot, but I just was throwing around the ball and getting across half court, like I always say, and not getting in the way of the guys that were supposed to be scoring. You and Ryan and Rob was hitting backboard jump shots. The only 6-foot guard to ever just shoot backboard jump shots is Ryan, nicknamed Juicy Lips, and Ryan the Raccoon running at the elbow, and Phil drilling threes. But we won, and I look back on like with such a fond memory, like the crowd was going crazy. They rushed the floor. I was my senior night. We beat an undefeated team in league. And then like the next morning, we had all gone out, had a great time, and yes, we were coming home super late. And I remember walking by the news. There were things where you'd get the newspaper out of it, the newsstand or whatever it was. And there we were, and there was a picture of me celebrating on the news, like on the sports. And it was that morning. We were still coming in. So it was a good fun of, night of celebrating our last game. But I tell you that not to pump myself up, but this year we were in Hawaii, and we lost a game. And I was giving the guys just like an example of being ready every game. And I was like, you made these guys feel like this. And I pulled out the picture of me celebrating on senior night versus Cal State San Bernardino. And it's like such a full circle moment. Like here I am, always being ready to compete. Like the opportunities that you get, they're so slim in college basketball and sports and life and all that. But that was pretty funny, like that I could bring that out. My assistants were like, don't show them that, coach. It makes you look like you're on the bench, number one, because you had just been subbed out. So you don't look like you're doing to help the team. But like, for me, and I know you like nostalgia of like looking back at like, moments like that, you got to be part of. Like as a player, you look at that, and then as a coach, you get to go back and use that, that you were a part of it. So I'm not going to throw you under the bus too much, but I really appreciate you having me on here and letting us talk about just life in general and leadership and being a part of each other's lives, man. So I hope I get to do it again at some point.
I would love to have it, man. And yeah, that I will add the San Bernardino game. That's a fond memory for me too. And it was a very ingrained moment, because I remember how important that was, how passionate you were, and it was on the heels of bad experiences with the Levy game. And I remember hitting a deep 3 late in the shot clock that was pretty far out, and your excitement and the way you celebrated it stuck with me, because I was trying to perform, trying to get things back on track. I wanted to have a great game for us, for you, but the unselfishness with which you celebrated throughout that game. It resonated with me, and I full circle moment to hit you on the head with that. Had a very similar feeling when we beat Stanford my senior year, and I remember like I have a similar shot of me celebrating with Thomas Jularad and Ramel Morentes that I've kept for years.
Yep.
That was, bringing a lot of those young freshmen along, right? And you're on the bench, and that moment for me, we celebrated, and it was a full circle moment for me too. And I thought about that Bernardino game a lot during that. So
that's an amazing one that you get to do that. And I think that the last, and I know we just keep going, but you just never know. Like, one game the night before you lose a game you shouldn't lose, and then the next night you have to play Stanford, and you're not supposed to win the game, and you come out and you play the game that you're supposed to play. To be a senior, to lead a team to beat Stanford at UC Davis that year, like, what an accomplishment. And just amazing. Like, you just don't get those memories, right?
Yep.
Like getting you for a back door, in a crucial moment, like isoing you at the elbow. I can still remember those plays. They just pop up. It's like reels, right? Flickers of time. So
that's right.
Yeah, man. I would love to keep doing it, but you and I could keep going all day long. And
that's right. We'll have to have you back, man. We'll have to have you back. I appreciate it. I'm working on you and Rob and Cobby and some others for our regular appearances here, because there's endless stories, man. But I appreciate you, man, and congratulations on the success. I'm super thrilled and proud of you, man, for what you're doing as a man, as a family man, and obviously the success you're having at Bernardino. And like I said, Clink's got me on speed dial, so I might come in for the guest appearance next time you guys play Chico. But keep up the great work, brother.
Thanks, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
I appreciate you, man.